All right. Well, welcome to another Run Wild with Us. Ask Us Anything. I'm Lisa Kastner. I am the founder, executive editor of Running Wild and RIZE. And we are here with you every Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time to answer any questions you may have around publishing, editing, um, storytelling, you name it. Typically, I'm here with one or two of my editors. It depends on everyone's availability. But either way, whether it's just me or it is me with a couple of our brilliant folks, you get to ask us whatever you want. So, in order to do so, you simply need to go ahead and put your questions into the comment section of our website or of this streaming post, and I will repeat your question and then respond to it. So, some interesting things that came up in the past week. Um, I'm a mentor for a few people at in the Horror Writers Association and for some other writers organizations. And it's always really fun to get to know and learn about new and aspiring authors who are out there in the world and what they're into and where they are in their relative careers. So one individual actually was planning on going to a writers conference and pitch to several agents. And I found it really interesting because I don't know how many authors realize this or aspiring authors realize this, but typically, what happens, a lot of the content that you have created for that query or for that pitch will then be reused and adjusted throughout the life of that story. So, what I mean by that is, let's say you pitch to us and you send us your manuscript and you've written a query, and in that query is the log line, which is like two or three sentences that are to capture the reader's interest. A brief, I wouldn't call it a synopsis really, it's more like what you may eventually use for your back jacket copies. So, enough information to really get someone's attention and to make them say, you know what, I want to pick this up. And then a bit of a bio, right? Again, something that is relevant to the story that you are pitching. And information like, is it 80,000 words? Is it 100,000 words? What genre you believe it's going to be, and so on. Now, typically what happens is when you submit to an agent or a publisher, what they're going to do is they're going to look at that, and oftentimes throughout the life cycle, so like let's say you join us and we pick up your amazing story and you're working with your editor, we are going to most likely take that pitch, or we're going to ask you to provide to us a log line and that jacket copy. And then, because we also have an agency that represents us and therefore represents our authors, that agency will then take those log lines and that pitch copy and provide it to different partners. And that could be anything from an audiobook company, it could be a TV producer, a film producer, it could be to pitch it for it to go into translation. And from that point, it's then used, uh, for us to be informed if, hey, you know what, this translation company absolutely adored the pitch and they want to read the rest of it. So, don't underestimate how the value of that content that you've created in order to get yourself an agency or get yourself an editor or get yourself uh, a publisher, because that actually is critical in terms of strength and uh, its ability or its um, power for getting others' attention, for you and for your content. So with that, I'm gonna shut up for a second. Hey, Ben.
Good evening.
How are
I'm
ya?
right on time, 6:05.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive, man. How are you doing? How's your week been?
It's been busy, even with the
Yeah.
holiday. All that planning we had to do, we were planning on all that editing we were going to do.
Mm.
No,
Oh, you mean you actually observed the holiday and took off?
no. Well, from editing, but
Uh,
it's nonstop.
yep,
It'll all get
understood.
done.
Yeah, I spent Friday night editing and like finishing up a couple of anthologies, and then I spent like part of Saturday bugging people to get me their bios so that I can close out these dang anthologies. And then I spent Saturday mostly working on work that I have to finish editing,
Yeah.
including a novel I've just started working on. And then
Yours?
Sunday. No, not mine.
Okay.
Sunday, I spent traveling to the Writers Coffee House, which is a coffee house that's free of charge, that happens the first Sunday of every month at Mysterious Galaxy Bookstore in San Diego. So if anybody
Okay.
is in the area, first Sunday of every month, definitely come check it out. I believe it starts at noon. It's from noon to 3. Really great group of folks that show up. But anyway, I take the opportunity of the train ride to the actual to San Diego to work on my own stuff. And then sometimes what I'll do is I'll like get a hotel room someplace close by, just so that again, like I'm just focusing on my own stuff instead of,
Yeah.
because I have this bad habit of saying, "Oh, I know I have to get these things done, but you know what? I'm going to go ahead and work on, these other manuscripts that we've acquired or whatever." So, yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, I did. I did. I actually worked on a new short story in the same universe as Cure. So, uh, when it's done,
Good.
I'll send it to you so that you're not and get your feedback, because it would be good to hear your thoughts on it. So, how about you? Have you been working on
I love
anything?
Cure.
Well,
Uh,
I'm
Other
glad
than
because you
editing,
edited it.
yeah. No, it's fun. It's a good story.
Mm. What have you been up to, young
And
man?
oh, let's see. Just writing, but I've got the Always Ready coming out August 4th.
Oh,
The
cool.
the Coast Guard poems. You
I'm
you
looking
saw the
forward to
book
that.
release, I think.
I
Yeah.
did, and I think I pre-ordered it. I
And
thought I
August
ordered it.
August 4th is the Coast Guard's birthday, so it's coming out on the Coast Guard's birthday.
Oh, smart. Oh, that's cool. You'll have to send me like the announcement online so I can spread the word.
Okay.
So you've just been doing your normal so what
Yeah.
is your like daily um habit for writing? Like, do you have one?
Oh, it's early. It starts early,
Yeah.
and I'm up at least by oh 4, or
Mm,
the latest by 4.
mm.
But on Tuesdays when I have to go across the river into Albuquerque, I get up at 2:30, so I have time to write, and
Ow.
then my wife and I go swimming, and then I go to work.
Wow.
Yeah, I've quit running, so now I'm swimming
Uh, is it
because
because
if
of joints?
Well, it's preparing the joints for later, I think. But
Oh, got it.
2 years ago, I tripped on some uneven sidewalk and I broke my shoulder,
Oh my
and
God.
and that made swimming look like a good option. But I told people that if that happened in the pool, I would have drowned.
Mm.
So if
Mhm.
you remember that, if you trip on a sidewalk in the pool,
Mhm.
you'll drown.
Okay.
Just go with it, Lisa.
I'm just, that's what I'm doing. I'm just going with it.
It's safer.
Yep.
But that's when I do most of the writing. It's like I say, it averages between 4 and 8 poems a day. Just
Wow.
just to get something down, ideas down, and so like I said, one or two of them are good. Not a day, but one or two of them a month are good.
I'm sure a lot more than one or two are good,
Yeah. But
especially
I've
considering
got
we've already published them.
that's right, that's right. Those were the best.
They were.
And I've got some series because I'll get on a theme and I shoot for. I used to just shoot for 30 because that felt like a good chapbook size, but
Mhm.
I've bumped it up to 51 just
Okay.
at random
Hey, if
because
it works. Mm,
because 51's a good odd number. It's 3 times
mm,
17.
cool. So I have to
Yeah.
ask, when we're going through the acquiring stories, what is it that
Mhm.
you are looking for?
What jumps out first is the good writing, and you can tell good writing right away. You know,
Mhm.
there's not. I mean, it flows, and there's no grammar mistakes. You know, there might be a comma missing or something, but you know, there's no heavy duty mistakes to trip up the reader. But
Mhm.
once you get past that, I look for the characters. Do you care what happened to the characters, or
Mm.
happens to the characters? And I remember once it was kind of a fairy tale where the two mice were traveling through the woods, and the hero mouse climbed up the tower and he fell, and
Mhm.
that was the end of the story. And I made the note to myself: it matters when he falls. And so
Mm.
when you care about the characters and what happens to them, good or bad, uh, that sells me.
Mm.
And so the characters draw me in. And of course, then there's the flow of the scene and the the logistics of it. Are the characters doing too much? Are
Mhm.
they, do they have their hands full and then suddenly they they set something on fire? Well, what did they do with all that stuff in their hands when they did this? And
Mhm.
and but that's the stuff that can be edited out and explain this better working with the writer, because the writer doesn't always see that type of stuff. But
Mhm.
I see the scene in my head, and to me, there's nothing in the character's hands anymore. So sure, he sets that on fire with the match.
Sure.
But
Why not?
yeah, so it's that's I think we probably all look for the good writing right up front, and
Mhm.
and what really bothers me sometimes is when a piece changes font size for no reason. That's just you can mark it all and change it to the right font size and take care of
Mhm.
that so easily. But I said, well, I wonder what the author was thinking when that wasn't taken care of.
Mhm.
It's but again, if the good character, I can mark it all and change the font size. But
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I definitely look for strong writing, great characters, strong voice.
yeah,
Um yeah, honestly, if we make it very clear in um the submission, like, please use a specific font, or don't have a copyright page, just so you know, that is the sign that you probably haven't been published before. Um, in all honesty, probably a lot of publishers would not pick it up because of that alone.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
typically, yeah, typically if an author submits a piece and there's just clear things in it that we've specified either not to do, or that goes against some guidance that we've provided.
Mhm.
Honestly, we get so many submissions, it's an excuse to
Yeah.
reject it.
Yeah.
And, to Ben, to your point, if the writing's really strong, I'll often try to come up with excuses not to reject it because I want to
Sure.
see the author successful. But it
Yeah.
is so incredibly distracting that if we specify, certain specific things not to do or specific things to
Mhm.
do, and the author has elected not to follow that, it oftentimes it'll just immediately get rejected. And I'll say in it, this didn't follow our specifications.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the most egregious one that we get typically is someone will write a short story collection or a poetry collection and submit it as a novella. And it's one thing if the short stories have an arc among them and
Yes.
it's thematic, like there's an actual theme, then
Mhm.
but if you are submitting collection of short stories that have nothing to do with one another, it's a very, very difficult to it's just not it's not a novella, right? Just
Yeah.
because it's 40,000 words does not make it a novella. It still makes it a type of a collection.
Mhm.
So, it's just better to actually follow our guidelines, and not and the other this one is new. Like this one I've only seen in the last I'd say 6 months. All of a sudden we started getting submissions where the books aren't done.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is someone sends us their query and their pitch and the first like 20 pages, and then they'll say, "Oh, and I haven't finished writing it yet." Do not send it to us. You want to send us the complete manuscript. I know that when you are submitting to an agencies, they specifically state that they want sample chapters, but we want the whole thing, because what happens is when we're going through our acquisition process, we will read the manuscript itself. We'll read it up to a certain extent to see if we do want to pick it up from there. If it's a thumbs up, we will then keep it and retain it to then take it through further into the acquisition process. And we want to make sure we don't want to create delays in any way, shape, or form of us actually having the opportunity to fully review it and potentially accept it. So if you do send us only like the first 20 pages, that does not help us understand your complete narrative arc. You just follow our guidelines, because again, anything that you do that does not follow our guidelines is just an excuse to reject the piece. So, and also know and understand, we do the same thing. Like we all submit to other publications, right? Ben just mentioned he's got a collection coming out shortly in August. I submit short stories. I'm actually going to have a couple of short stories coming out in the near future. I also publish long form, and I have to follow the guidelines of those publications as well. And
Yeah.
every publication has their own quirk, their own specific things that you have to follow. So just follow it, right?
Yeah.
And to Ben's
Because
point,
they're clearly stated.
it is. And,
Yeah.
and again, don't give someone an excuse to turn you down. Give them excuses to accept your work.
Yeah.
So now that I've ranted, if anybody is watching and you have any questions for us, please feel free to go ahead and pop it into the comments section, and we will be more than happy. I will repeat the question, and then Ben and I will both answer it. And if you are watching this and it is not Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern time, that's totally fine. Go ahead and put your questions again in the comment section, and I'll repeat them the subsequent week. Which reminds me, Ben, we we got a question. Someone asked which anthology had your novella of the Cuban in it. Do you remember which one it was? Was it? It wasn't the first novella collection, was it?
I think it was
I
number 2.
Oh, that sounds right. And it was the novella one, right? It
I can.
wasn't the short story one.
No, it was novella. It was a
Yeah.
novella.
Okay, perfect.
And
Yeah. So anyone watching, you want to pick up
I'll
Running
venture back to
Wild?
the shelf. Shall I venture back to the shelf and see for sure?
Yes, please.
It's right there.
Oh, stop.
It's right there.
Oh, that was one of my favorite covers.
Yeah.
Can you hold it up for those? All right, and that's book 2, right?
Volume 2, part 1.
Okay, cool. All right, so it's
Because we had
running.
two books.
We had 2 books. Cool. So it's
Yeah,
Running Wild
but
novella
the volume is
anthology,
volume 2.
volume 2, and book 1. And it's
Yes,
fantastic. It's a
page 309.
fantastic page 309. Oh, excuse me.
I had it marked. Oh, gee, I knew where it was and had the page marked and everything. It was me that asked the question. That's
Yeah, yeah. You pretended to be somebody else and you were like, "Hey,
yeah,
ask
that sounds really
me
interesting.
about my book."
Yeah,
That one was actually pretty popular.
yeah.
We had a lot of people who picked that one up. So, you did something right.
Yes, it was. The Cuban was it was a choice for one of the choices for the MFA thesis,
Oh.
and so it was written at the same time as Triggerfish and the Recon trilogy, the Triggerfish poems.
Mm.
But we went with Triggerfish anyway. And every time the advisor told me that I had, I had to change something in Triggerfish, I said, "Well, there's always the Cuban." But they were fun to write.
I bet.
Yeah,
They look like fun.
yeah, and,
So,
and
so
great
did
characters.
you do anything cool for the holiday this past weekend?
My son's 21st birthday was on Tuesday, the 5th.
Oh, cool.
So he took the whole weekend, as he should.
He's supposed to. Yeah. He should do that every time.
Yeah, whether it's a holiday or not.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I
we
got to
did do
have
that,
good. I got
and
to
that
have
means that
brunch. Hmm?
the 21 years ago we were on the riverfront in New Orleans, walking on the 4th of July, trying to induce him out.
Oh, wow.
So, and it worked. It worked. He showed up on the 5th.
Okay. Cool. I had brunch at an outdoor cafe that's was all of like 2 blocks off of the beach. So that was my big excitement for the 4th of July.
Nice.
I guess like a
That's
non-typical, but yeah.
I envy that.
So Don McIntyre asks, what was your favorite library and what's your favorite bookstore?
Oh wow. I find myself going to A books a lot for the used books.
Abe?
abebooks.com.
Oh,
It's an
okay. How
online
about like
bookstore.
how about a physical bookstore?
Oh, there's one. It's just called Books in Rio Rancho, New Mexico.
Oh.
Yeah, it's kind of in a strip mall, kind of tucked away.
Mhm.
But I'm hoping to have a reading with them, so I'll say they're my favorite. If I
Okay.
don't get the reading, then I'll change my mind.
That's fine. How about library?
The library is our
Mm.
library still a thing?
Yeah, they still exist.
I'll go with my grandmother was actually the librarian of the Wayne County Library in Monticello, Kentucky. So I'll go with that one. I grew up in
All
that one,
right. All
playing
right.
hide and
That
seek
works.
after hours. If
That
you've
sounds
never
like
gotten to play
fun.
hide and seek in a library, you're really missing out. And it had an
Cool.
elevator to go down the basement so they could carry books back and forth. So we would get on the elevator
Mm.
and play. I'm sure we weren't
Oh,
supposed to, but we did.
well, no one had to know then.
No. Think of the story it made later. I need to write it down.
Yeah,
Hide and seek in the
totally. You
library.
could you could totally make a bunch of great stories out of that.
Yeah. I'm hiding over here by Steinbeck.
uh, I think my favorite in-person bookstores are the Barnes and Noble off of Rittenhouse Square in Philadelphia,
Oh,
uh,
nice.
Booksoup in Hollywood, California, and Mysterious Galaxy Bookstore in San Diego, California. And then my favorite online is Mysterious Galaxy. Has a pretty fabulous online bookseller component.
Yeah.
And my favorite library is the Los Angeles Library. They actually have a really fantastic like nonprofit sponsors program that pre-pandemic would have like these really great events where you could, you're basically, you pay, a couple $100 to go, but the money A is going to a great cause because it benefits anything from like the children's programs at the library to, if they have any other kind of special event, special uh, series that's going on. And it's just like it's a whole lot of fun, and really really great people.
Yeah.
And it's also a great way to find out about up and coming books and like new books that are coming out. And so yeah, so I now it's really interesting, at least to me, possibly not to anybody else. um when I was growing up, I grew up 2 blocks away from a park, and it was a really small like neighborhood park. And when I was really little, there was a small library at the top of the hill in the park, and I think I was all of maybe 5 or 6, and it burned down. And they never
Oh,
bothered.
no.
Yeah, they never bothered to rebuild it. They just basically bulldozed it down as if it had never existed. And I always thought that was like a major loss, because as a kid, that was like the cool place to go, because you could get any kind of book, at the time,
Yeah.
even though it was tiny. But that was a fun question. Thanks, Don. Um, Caroline Shannon
I remember
Davenport says,
the first book I got from a library
"Oh yeah,
was
what was
Alice
it?
in Wonderland. Alice in Wonderland.
Really?
And I colored it with a blue crayon. And I
Oh,
was in trouble.
I was gonna say I
I
don't
was
think
in
that
trouble.
they intended that. Yeah.
No. I'm not sure how that was taken care of, but I know how I was taken care of.
Now, why'd you color it?
Well, because I thought it was a book and it needed colors. I thought it was a coloring book. I might have been
Ah,
5.
okay. That makes
I didn't
sense.
have a library card, so they couldn't get me.
Now Now, was this at
Such a
your
rebel.
grandma's library or?
No, that was actually over in Cumberland, Kentucky, where my other grandmother lived,
Mm,
and she was also a librarian, but for the school system.
oh,
A long
cool.
line of librarians,
I'm hearing
and there I
that.
am marking up their books.
Anybody else in your family become a librarian?
Uh, no. Well, actually, my mother did.
Oh,
She worked in the school systems as a librarian as well.
ah,
And then,
cool.
yeah, living across the hall from my grandmother's apartment was Miss Elizabeth Simpson, and she was the sister of the the writer of the doll maker, Harriet Arno
Oh,
Simpson. You know her? You've
wow.
heard of
Y- yeah,
her?
cool.
Yeah, and they were distant cousins to somehow. Everybody said they're related,
Mm.
but my mother took her. She didn't. She had a copy of the book, and she met Harriet Simpson Arno at a writers' conference, but she didn't have the book with her. So
Mm.
she asked her to sign just a piece of paper, and Miss Simpson said, "Well, maybe next time you'll bring the book."
Oh, damn.
Yeah, she said, "Well, I
Yeah.
have the book. I've even read it." But
Uh,
Harriet Arno Simpson was probably about Harriet Simpson Arno. What Harriet Simpson Arno, I guess, and
mm,
she was probably about 95 years old at the time. She could see what
wow.
she wanted
Mhm.
to.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I went to a sci-fi conference in the San Diego area, and I got to speak to, let's just say I got to speak to several legends in the science fiction and fantasy world. And I
Yeah.
remember at one point, a gentleman walked up to me and was like, "Hey," and just started talking. And I must have had this look on my face like, I have no idea who you are. So thankfully, the person I was, because we were manning a table, the person I was manning the table with, Tone Milazzo, was like, "Yes," and then named the said person, so that I was like, "Oh, yep, I know who you are."
So nice
Yeah,
save.
yeah, he totally saved my butt, man. He did that a couple of times, so thank you, Tone, because I was like, I mean, because I don't know everybody by face, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but
Oh yeah.
typically if you mention, oh, this person's J.K. Rowling, I'll be like, oh shit, okay.
Now I
But
know.
now I know. But I actually do know what J.K. Rowling looks like. So anyway,
Yeah.
um, Priya Meyer says, "Hey, I was curious about how Running Wild and Rise manages to publish so many books a year. It's quite impressive." I don't know. You want to take a stab at that one, Ben?
it's, it's because we don't take holidays. That's why. But I think it goes down to the quality of the submissions we get and the
Mm,
number of submissions we get, and then we farm them out to interested editors that really like to do it, and if they don't want to edit a project, they'll come back pretty quickly and say this is really not for me, and so
mhm,
we'll farm it out to someone else. But it's a good team effort, I think, with the titles that come in, and then the selection process is a very nice team effort to really see why somebody likes it, why somebody didn't, and those conversations are fun. Really, I didn't see that, but the conversations we have, uh, we if you like it, we can market it to each other, and we sell it. We sell each other on it, and then say, well, we'll find the right editor and we'll go with it if it's that quality to one of us. And usually, though, it's an agreement. It goes back to the quality of submissions. We'll see a enough books to get to our editors and get them out and published.
Yeah, that I
It's
mean,
it's a fun process.
yeah, no, I concur. We usually, I'd say per year, we usually get anywhere from 5 to 800 submissions. Um, and uh but that's inclusive of short stories, novellas, as well as long form. So and typically we try to, for novellas and short stories, we're just looking for quality work. It's not by theme. And then when the pieces are actually published, we try to make sure that the way the book is formatted, each story gets its own highlight, like its own um, platform, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
So it's center stage within that one portion. For To Ben's point, for the long form, we've had several times when, one person saw a work and was like, "Wow, I love this. I can see where it can be strengthened," and they just basically pitch it to the other acquisition editors and the other individuals who were involved in the acquisition process. And if they can sell it, and honestly, if they're passionate
Mhm.
enough about it that they want to edit it, then that's game on.
Yeah.
um and all those people, if you go to our website and you look at our team, every single person, we're all doing this because we love great stories and we want to get those great stories out to eager fans. And you would be amazed at the number of really fantastic writing and fantastic storytelling is out there that isn't getting picked up by, the bigger houses. And I could go on a whole nother rant as to why and all that. And there's already been articles published about all this that, you're going to probably see at least one or two more articles coming out in the near future, on this topic about the challenges within not just the publishing industry, but any kind of media and entertainment, how they decide on what stories to acquire and why, and how that's limiting not only to readership and fans and potential fans, but it also really, really severely limits their business models and the potential for that business's growth and influence on society. Um, but yeah, but because everybody is passionate about what they're here to do, and the way that we select editors is, to Ben's point, we'll go through the work and then see who among our editors would be the most likely to want to publish it, or who would be passionate about that story, um, whether it be for the writing or the storytelling or whatever the case may be. And then they tell us if they want to be the editor for it. And and then we just take it from there. So admittedly, right now we're publishing somewhere between, we target between like 10 and 15 books per house per year, which some people may say, oh, it's not a lot. Well, that's 20 to 30 books a year. And to Priya's point, I got to tell you, we all have full time jobs and we all have families and we all have our own writing and we're driving all this. So it can be, like I know I don't have weekends. And I'm fine with that, just to be clear, right? Because I'm the nut who started all this mess. So you know, I enjoy getting off work from my day job and from my other responsibilities, and then spending time to really elevate all these great storytellers. So so thank you for the compliment, and thank you for the fun question. We're also actually
I
really
think for me,
blessed. Sorry, go ahead. Hmm.
Oh, just from the acquisition editor point of view, I think there's a considerable amount of trust,
Mm,
in between us,
hmm.
and if Peter Wright says, "Hey, this is great writing," I trust him to, yeah, that's great writing. Then Peter says it's so, it's so, and
Hmm.
Joel's the same way. The opinion on a piece, they've got credibility among that team of acquisition editors, and and the trust goes a long way.
Yeah, agreed.
I
And
say, okay,
well, because we've
let's do it.
all been working together in some capacity for what, like 4 or 5 years now, and
5, yeah.
yeah. So, we all know each other's tastes, we all know each other's strengths, and we all know, like, when someone, like, if Ben comes to me and says, this just nailed it for me, then I'm going to listen, right? Same with Peter, same with Joelle,
Mm-hmm.
same with Nicole, right? I'm
Yeah,
I'm right there when if they say, this is really killing it, then it I'm gonna perk up. Now, admittedly, uh, we've had we do the same thing. Like, if someone comes to us who we already know, we're already familiar with, um, who's an editor or a friend who's like really well uh, published or well versed, and they come to us and say, "Hey, I'd love it if you check out this one submission," then it will go at the top of um, our pile. Uh, it still has to be submitted through Submittable, right? Just because we don't want it to get lost in anybody's mailbox. But it will,
which
it
reminds me, I
does go
got a couple
far.
of short stories in my mailbox.
You do. Oh, and I was gonna say this to you on the
Dang it!
side, but our next big acquisition editor review is in the first week of August. So if you are watching this and you have a long story, and what a long story is, that means a book that is over like 45,000 words, and you've got a complete manuscript. It can be for either Running Wild, which is primarily cross genre stories, or for Rise, where it's primarily genre stories written by underrepresented groups. Then you want to get it into us in our submittable page by the end of this month, because if you want it to be considered during our next round. And also, so you know, our next round, we already have full slates for 2023. And we have, if not full slates, then almost full for 2024. So we're really looking at stories at this point for either 2024 or 2025. So just keep that in mind when you're sending us work. We also do it that way in part because we work with a distributor that they mandate we have the complete stories into them 12, it's like 9 to 12 months in advance of the publication date. And the reason for that is so that their sales team can then go out to libraries and bookstores and retailers and pitch these fantastic stories to those businesses. So, keep that in mind as to why, because sometimes people hear 2025 and they're like, "Oh my God, like, why in the world are you people doing that?" Well, that would be why. That, and there's only so many of us, and with so much time, so we take as many as we absolutely can. So. All right, so we are at, it's already, holy crap, it's already 5:45, and or 8:45 if you're on the East Coast. And if you are watching this, please go ahead and feel free to pop your question into the comments section of our live stream. If you are watching this and it is not Thursday at 5 p.m. or between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. Pacific time, it's not a big deal. Again, go ahead, put your question in the comments section, and we will then go back and repeat it for um, to so that you get the answer to your question, whatever that question may be. So, Ben, has there ever been like a story that as soon as you read it, you were like, "Oh my God, we've got to get this out there"?
Um, I think there's been a couple of novels that have hit me that way. Escape Route with Elon, his work,
Barnehama?
it it
Yeah.
uh it did that. Yeah, yeah. Elon D. And it was just the characters that jumped out and said, we can work with this, and it was fun to work with. Well, it's fun to work with all the authors because you know the approach is to do it with them and not to them or for them.
Mm,
The editing is with the authors, and,
mhm,
and so it's just suggestions. And if they reject them and say no, I really want this there, then okay, I can listen to you and say it's if you've got it in there for your own reasons, and that's just as valid as any reasons I can come against it. Um, but some short stories, there's always those that impacts the reader more than others, and I'm like a reader like any other. There's going to
mhm,
be some that do and some that don't. But as an editor, I have to adjust and say that's let me filter it through an objective perspective instead of my own subjective. And would it appeal to other people? And usually the answer is yes. So the editing is just making sure that it flows for any reader.
mm,
And and but the ones that I like are really the weird ones with those weird characters doing weird stuff, but
mm,
or just a good story, and the good story will jump out at us, and we'll say, yeah, let's go with this one, whether it's a novella
mhm,
or a short story or a novel. And like Obsidian Waste that I'm working on now for Rudolfo Serna,
mhm,
it's the the writing is futuristic, but that's okay because the story is futuristic. So, and I talked to him about it. I said, there's going to be some presses that would say, well, you're using way too much ing words, but it's showing the action in the
mhm.
future, and that's maybe the way people think and talk and write. So it fit his story and his novel, and so that's coming along.
No, cool. That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
I'd say I
And we're,
honestly,
we're gonna experiment a little bit with it on the page and
mm,
see how the one line paragraphs uh, draw attention to that one line. If Because the reader's going to say, well, if the author put that on a line by itself and it's a
mhm,
short sentence, that might be important to focus on,
mhm,
and so work on a different level of the writing itself. So we don't want to lose this thought in a paragraph. We want it to stand alone.
mm.
And I'm always looking for those because those have impact.
It's funny. I am recently am mentoring someone, and the author wrote the novel in present tense. Now, typically, when someone's using present tense, it's because they want it to have greater immediacy, and
Mm-hmm.
because it forces like an immediacy to the work itself. Because and honestly, there are tons of reasons not to use present tense, because you can't have the same kind of reflection that you're going to have in third person close, or in a more distant narrative voice. But what made this interesting was the author was using progressive tense, so the ing verbs, and I and typically progressive tense. The reason it's recommended not to use progressive tense is because it takes away from the immediacy of the work itself. So it um it doesn't it pulls the reader away from the story, and which is again why many editors will recommend not to use the progressive tense. So, to Ben's point, though, my question back to the author was like, why are you using progressive tense? My assumption is that you're using present tense because of the immediacy and because it, forces the reader to, read through faster, right? Like you plow through it. But are you aware that by using the progressive tense, what you're actually doing is it's almost like you're nullifying the reason that you're using present tense. And the author came back and was like, holy crud, I totally didn't realize I was even using progressive tense because there are all these almost like superstitious things that are out there in the writing world, like, avoid using that and but, right? And so authors will find any way they can think of as a workaround to get away from using, that and but, what were, are, right? Certain non-descriptive verbs, and so this author had inadvertently been using progressive tense because she was trying to avoid, all of these other things. And as soon as she started analyzing her story to see what she was doing and where she was doing it, she was like, wow, oops, okay, yeah, I didn't mean to do that, right? Let me go back and assess it. But to Ben's point, if the author's doing this intentionally, like there's a purpose to it, then we're not here to tell them your purpose, you know, is wrong. We're just here to point out, hey, are you aware of X? And we back whatever your final decision is, right?
Yeah.
But just make sure that what you're doing with intention. And I think a lot of times
And
authors
consistency.
and consistency. Oh, 100%. I think a lot of times authors, myself included, I'll come up with an idea and I'll start writing it, and I'm writing to the idea, but I may not necessarily crystallize why what I'm doing is important for that overarching narrative. And during the course of writing that story, you should come to understand why you're doing whatever it is that you're doing, instead of it simply being, a hook or a trope, right? Or some kind of kitschy technique. It should, whatever it is that you are doing intentionally, it needs to be done in order to drive the story, to reinforce the story, to make the story that much better. So I don't know. Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, and it's it comes down to the writer's intent, like you say, and so many times the intent is there in one part, but it loses it. The author forgets that, oh yeah, that's my intent. So the consistency becomes an issue. And why did you shift the tense here, or the way you shift the tense with a flashback is really confusing with the rest of the text. So it's a, a matter of intent and consistency and being consistent with your intent.
Mm-hmm. Caroline Shannon Davenport asks, curious, do your characters drive your work? You go first.
Absolutely. the Well, when you name a piece, the Cuban, the Cuban's got to drive the work, and the because he's telling the story, so it's his life. For instance,
Mm.
um, and those of you who haven't heard me say this, the Cuban is a Russian. Why not? Of course he is. And so um, the characters get to carry the emotion to it, and
Mm.
the whether and they can disagree over emotion. They can disagree and support each other as the story goes. But my characters are there for reasons, and hopefully interesting.
Um, so my stories all are almost always inspired by uh I mean, I get inspiration from a billion different places, just like everybody else. I typically am writing to a character, and it's like the character's personality and like what I think the character would do in certain situations. I uh I pretty much always write an outline. Now that outline could be something as simple as, like in a mystery actually has a specific narrative arc, and I may just simply summarize what the most important elements would be within those key portions of that arc. And then I'll go through and start writing it. But as I'm writing it, I'll realize, oh, this character actually, this would be much more interesting if this other character did this and drove it forward this way, and then see how that affects the overall story. Because oftentimes, what you initially come up with, and Ben knows this about my writing because the poor man has edited a few of my stories. Um, I almost always start off with a a narrative a narrative arc, right? Some kind of summary or bullet points or outline for the story. And seriously, I do this for short stories, I do it for novellas, I do it for long form. And then I kind of play with it to figure out like what would make this more interesting, right? How could this be a more layered narrative? And then as I'm writing it, that's when I'll realize again, like, oh, you know what? This isn't all this interesting when Joe's doing it. But if Jane's doing it,
Yeah.
now, okay, this is, we're getting somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Or if this guy dies, it's kind of like, well, I expected him to die, but wait a minute. If instead he doesn't die, he lives, and this other character is injured, or you find out this other character is some crazy genius or whatever it is, that's when you say, all right, now this is making sense, now this
Yeah.
is interesting.
Yeah. And sometimes the scene will help with I'm thinking of in the Recon trilogy plus one. There's the first part is called Triggerfish 1-2, where Triggerfish is a lieutenant who's in the jungle with a head injury, and
Hmm.
so that head injury helps him travel through time and situations, and that whole story started with an idea about what it would be like for a soldier in Vietnam to patrol through Woodstock,
Hmm.
and that's where that started. That was the idea for that whole piece, and he's on the radio and he's calling back and saying, "No, this is a music picnic," and they said, "No, those aren't peace signs. Those are for the Viet Cong." And so he's arguing with headquarters over the radio. So the situation lets even the same character change and see the world in different ways.
Hmm.
So character and scene are very important.
Caroline Shannon Davenport asks, do you know how it ends when you start a book, or do you let your character lead, eventually telling you?
It never ends the way I thought it was going to end. The characters let me know what to do. They said, "This is where we're going, Ben. You going with us or not?" Said, "Okay, I'll go with you."
Yeah, I usually, I mean, I'll plot it out to the end, and it rarely ends exactly the way that I thought it was going to. It's usually along the same lines. And there's almost always some intentionally, admittedly, narrative arc, not the primary arc, but like a secondary thread or a tertiary that I leave open, because that makes it honestly, it makes it a lot more fun to then possibly go back and write another story that where that secondary or tertiary narrative arc is fulfilled. So and then that kind of threads it to another one and to another one. So cool. Wow, it's already 6 o'clock. So, for you guys who have been watching, thank you so much. It's been amazing talking to you. Thank you, Priya. Thank you, Don. Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you, Caroline. Fabulous to see you guys. Please feel free, join us next Thursday, same bat time, same bat channel. And again, feel free to, you can ask us absolutely anything, and we will be more than happy to talk about it. So have an amazing weekend, and we will see you next time.
Next
Ciao.
week. Bye bye.